So I'm not going to cover the stuff I did with images through MMF because it's on my Mac, and I decided to try the PC objects. And I kind of struggled a little bit to think of a kind of suitable project to do with the objects. And like quite a lot of the objects were pushing my brain a bit to try and get really to grips with. So I think with about 3 weeks to go, I thought I'm just going to, what would I actually like to do, and forget the objects. So I thought it'd be nice to build a system that I can kind of play with myself with. So I ended up making like a visual score, very simple language that there's no corpora, and there's no, nothing happens until you put sound into it, basically. And the idea is that you could use it with more or less anybody. It doesn't have to be a musician. And it's quite easy to understand, and it's quite easy to just interpret the way that you want. So I think what I might do is I might just play a bit, because I'm a bit nervous to whether it actually works or not. So I might play a bit, and then we'll take you through how it works or not. So we've got a microphone, and we've got a contact microphone as well. And they're both just going into the audio input. I'm going to play an instrument that I don't know how to play, which is always good. Let's just see what the level's like. Yeah. Right, cool, okay. And the idea is, roughly speaking, that you play when the red bits happen, and then the computer is like feeding back to you your playing, but processed in the blue sections. But you don't get to, the score doesn't exist yet. The score responds to what you're playing into it in order to make its next move. Well, it will do by tomorrow. At the moment, it's random. But it's kind of random. It's a little bit random, but it doesn't have to be random. I think I'll show you the basics, how it works. So there's a bit where the sound comes in, which is around here, and it is recorded into one big long buffer, and the input is analyzed by mel bands, and I do like a rough, what is the range of the dynamics of that input, and then just what's the loudest band in order to get a kind of perceptual kind of rough idea of what is a frequency center. I thought it's reasonably musical, I think, using the mel bands thing. All this stuff here was, I did draw the mel band stuff into the score, which was kind of looked really cool, but also was quite confusing, and it went over the top of the stuff. But it was really good if you didn't bother to clip it, because it could go over the entire score and create confusion. So yeah, quite nice. And somewhere there's a process that when the block has finished recording, it basically, as quickly as possible, analyzes that block for loudness. And I was doing pitch as well, but I did have a few issues just with doing too much processing, pausing the kind of lovely scrolliness of it. But there's definitely, what I did try was like delaying the processing by a random amount after the bits had been recorded, and it worked quite well.
Have you tried the non-real-time version or the second thread version? There's a way to not block anymore.
Yeah, no, I was like just trying all the different blocking modes, basically, which were really great, but I didn't quite make it completely not block the graphics drawing.
Oh no, but the graphics drawing. Yeah, if you run it in the scheduler, looking zero. No, that probably still would work with graphics.
Yeah, I did try everything. I did try every combination, but it's totally fine. I kind of get away with it in this kind of incarnation. But I think if I wanted to do much more, like pitch could be really useful to actually But I got it running reasonably well, and then it turned out that I didn't have time to implement a useful way of. I had no use for it, but obviously that you can see that it might come in useful at some point. So yeah, most of the work in the patch is just making the score work graphically and just dealing with what do you do about the end of the page and the start of the next little line, and there's the really ugly bits about how to generate code and then generate the blocks. It works. Surprised me. Yeah, and there's your 3 shapes. You've got ramp up, ramp down, and block. The playback bit. So yeah, let me talk about my fantasies now. So my fantasy is that it uses the information that I got out of mail bands to decide how busy you're playing, what you're playing, roughly speaking, and then chooses the next chunk on that. So then there's a kind of nice feedback loop. We're not quite there, but I don't think it'd be too difficult to do. There are kind of, I wanted to keep the playback as simple as possible. So there's a nice little use of the buff compose object in making a wavetable. So those sine waves and things that are dirty sine waves are actually wavetables taken from a normalized tiny chunk of whatever goes in. So even if you've just got an open mic, it'll just amplify that until it's like a kind of noisy wave. So yeah, these are little wavetables made out of the audio input. I take 20 of the loudest bits from every input buff kind of chunk, so I can instantly get something which is fair, which is definitely there's something happening, which is with a patch like this, it's really nice just to know, I'll just go here in the file and there's definitely something there that I can use.
So is the size of that block variable? You say that the big block that it's taking?
Yeah, well, the red blocks on the score dictate how long it's going to record for.
Okay.
So each input, each little block is going to record for like that length of time that block exists.
And take the 20 pointers where the loudest bit of the 20.
Where it picks up.
The 20 loudest bits of that block.
Yes, it does.
Okay. So that's why you're sure to get something that is vaguely phased with
But it did phase.
Yeah.
I mean, we're not
inline, loudish.
Oh, it does. It seems to work.
Yeah, it seems to respond about the same thing. So.
Yeah, it seems to work. I think I had to. Yeah, normalizing waves. You have to write your own little normalization, or else it can just bang up against like the positive or the negative side. So, what else? Oh yeah, it's using 2D waves. So it's actually, it's like scanning subsections of that wavetable to get a changing sound, which is quite nice. The input so there's a mel band again on the output. So then it decides, where is it? Well, somewhere it decides, there it is. So MB output, loudest band, it picks a frequency for that oscillator which is like fairly unused. So with the idea that hopefully it kind of fills things, and things don't just keep piling up on the same frequency. There's a few ways that the sound's used. So you've got the wavetable, this one, which is called delay forever, which is a feedback delay. Which is boring. And then there's this 4-voice, which is just the 4 chunks playing back, sort of cross-faded, like a big, long, granular thing. But it's not. Doesn't sound like you know. Try not to be rude about granular synthesis, but it doesn't sound like granular. It sounds more like something like you might get on a tape experiment or something like that from maybe the 70s. Bit vintage. And then we've got a thing called chunker, which is just takes any chunk from any buffer and then just plays them back really quickly, and it sounds nice. Which I think is not. Yeah, so there's a bit of the chunker in there. But there's obviously something else going on as well. Yeah, it's sort of a work in progress. Questions? Yes?
Is it audience participation tomorrow? Or are you filming?
I don't know, it depends, doesn't it?
Did you say that it was audience? No, did I read
He
that?
said it could be.
No,
Okay,
the audience
okay.
sees the score.
Ah.
The score is projected. So the answer is there's no during participation. They can look at this. Don't do that with the other.
So you will project the score.
The score is
Yeah.
projected. Yeah, there's a big projection.
And you'll have like 200 balloons for the audience?
Yeah, I've actually got about, I've got quite a lot. I mean, I bet you I've got more balloons than there's going to be in the audience. So,
Some sort of compressor.
yeah. I did actually make some compressors. Oh, you mean a wind compressor? Sorry.
What's it like to play? Is there a kind of predictable arc for you as a player in what it does, or is it surprising every time?
It's surprising because a different bug shows up every time I play through it. There's quite a lot of stuff that can happen still that I've not obviously kind of accounted for, but there are rough guides to the block length, the pause length, the amplitude range. So there's like a function object, the graphical function object, which gives a rough, and if you just totally set it random, it's like, it just makes, it's musically horrible. So you can see on where we got to, like the bottom line, then it's obviously like tending towards kind of smaller chunks. And then you can set roughly the how busy the processing blue things are. And the Melband stuff feeds back into and nudges those like values that I've set. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So there's consequences to everything you do in some way that's going to force the next set of decisions it makes into a different zone.
Yeah. So there's a kind of it's guided, but it's also quite random as well. And I think I was trying not to make it too random, and then I thought, fuck it, it's actually fine to have loads of random. And I made all the graphic stuff. I spent like 2 weeks doing like the thing before I even made a sound. So then at that point, I just wanted to make it sound something that I'd be kind of proud of, basically, rather than a kind of a kind of exposition of the objects. But I did find that, I really like how snappy it is. And I also, there's loads of stuff that nearly made it, like your convolution objects. It's really nice to take two buffers and just convolve them together. And it's super quick as well, so it just happens really quickly, doesn't it? It happens mega quick.
Depends on the size.
Yeah.
Hans had a question.
Yep.
And then a quick one for Olivier, and then we'll go for coffee. Hans.
I like the kind of third system where your density after the second one really goes back to almost kind of a duo of one input at the beginning and then just the tail of one process, etc. So, I mean, you described you had some kind of an overall function for the length of the blocks. Do you have also kind of a formal idea of what is the duration of the piece and how you structure density in there?
Yes, the length of the piece is the number of pixels it is in total length times 33 milliseconds, which is the frame rate that I'm running at. So it's exactly the length that I said it was like 2.5 months ago. So it's either 10 or 11 minutes something, 6 seconds. So it's about 10 minutes long, basically. And the density is I'll show you the guide. But these are not like hard parameters. These are nudged by stuff. So this is the bit that makes the human red block section, and then we've got these. So we have got pause length at the top, block length range, block amplitude range, machine block density. That is the one that controls how many blue things. But your input can pull that density right down to 0. So it's only a it's a 50-50 thing. And then we've got, what's that bottom one? Clatter, which is the kind of fast, choppy thing. Something that, if it plays all the way through, is very annoying. So it just fades in. Well, not fades in.
It goes in and goes out, and it's very clear formal shape.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you say like every time you played it through, you had other bugs showing up. But besides that, I mean, when you had more successful playthroughs, what would be your musical criteria to come to that judgment?
I think it's intuitive, isn't it? For me, anyway. I record it and I listen back and think, yeah, I like that or not.
But you also know why you like it. It's not just intuitive. You also know why you like it.
Well, maybe stuff happens that pushes my musical buttons in there, and then I'll try and. So the shape started off quite simple and quite different. So maybe if something like, oh yes, it's played a sine wave for 5 minutes at the same frequency, I would like to not have that happen. I will kind of adjust these things. So a lot of like reacting to what you're not happy with. And then everything that's left is fucking brilliant. Obviously. Which is how it works, isn't it?
Yeah, sometimes, yeah. 1 minute, Olivier.
Electronic study.
Yes.
I was just about to say, it's kind of a combination of cadence to housing approach.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Totally.
I mean, that is the inspiration, obviously, for it. It's just beautiful.
I love it.
thing.
Yeah. But
And it comes with Max, doesn't it?
there is a
There
nice
is one.
Yeah.
On the next for next step.
Can we see? Can we?
Question is, visually speaking, why red? These colors don't matter, or is there an aesthetical choice behind it, or you just want to show the score as a score?
I thought what's going to be really obvious for an audience, because the score is there.
Yeah.
The fact that it's for the audience can see it is like super important.
It's quite exposing for you.
Well,
It's exciting, but it's also exposing.
it's exciting, but you.
If you find it, it's great.
Where the fuck is it? It's the master patch.
Window. You go to
Your window menu will help you.
Where?
the
The
window
menu
menu
for the Mac or Windows.
Hold on, this helps.
Oh yeah,
fuck.
please say.
There it is.
Here we go.
Okay.
Are you saying that Microsoft got one interface right?
It's amazing.
I think it's just getting used to a different
Paradigm.
Yeah, it's like it's got ports and things. I think it's yeah.
And it's half the price.
And it's half the price. But I wanted it just to be really clear.
Yeah.
I've done like pre-rendered graphic score pieces which look really similar, which have groups which are like primary coloured groups.
Yes.
But there's no input stuff on it, and for me it's like a combination of that like super kind of nice kind of minimal kind of score that Stockhausen did, and then something that like I wanted it to make a sound a bit like a Parmigiani album from '76 or something.
Basic transposition, filtering.
Yeah, just the basic
Charming.
stuff, but then like does having there are times where it creates, for me, like quite emotive musical stuff happens, which is, I guess, what I was, I was like, oh, it's really cold, kind of just play here, stop here, and like some of the things are quite hard, some are soft. So yeah, an experiment, and we'll see tomorrow whether it works.